back at the whiteboard for another amazing morning of learning how to manipulate your money. No, it's not manipulating, it's structuring, putting a healthy framework on it. Now, you might have realized I'm not wearing a black top in this video. It's because the weather's significantly nicer today. That spate of like mid to high 30-degree days is over, thank goodness. But also, truth be told, when I was going through my wardrobe, I realized I have like 90% of my wardrobe is like black t-shirts. And so I probably need to actually allocate some money from the budget to buy non-black shirts. But that's something I'll have to figure out later. I mean, I'm married, so I'm not really in charge of my wardrobe decisions. So this is going to have to be a negotiation with my wife about what I get as far as my clothing is concerned going forward. And of course, whatever I say, I'm going to be wrong anyway. So I'm just going to stick to what I know, and I'll let her stick to what she knows too. I'm wearing these comfy pants too. These I think I wore these the night before I got married. That's what I got these for. They're like pajama shorts, super comfy. So we can be nice and relaxed as we go through this exciting module. And so bringing me into it, we're going into accruing. So in the last 2 episodes, I talked about allocating your income and strategies for allocating the budget so that you can actually meet your financial obligations and needs in the future as well as in the present. In the last episode, I went through putting your allocation in, putting what you spent in, and that generating a balance for you. So in this episode, I'm going to actually talk about how you stack the balances from each pay cycle, and then you get what is basically an accrued total. So I'm keeping it really simple. I'm breaking it right down into these little fragmented parts so that we can start to see how the whole picture comes together. Because I'm really excited to actually present and deliver a spreadsheet that I've developed over the last 5 or 6 years that basically includes all of these factors. So I just really wanted to start off by getting these basic principles down pat, and so that you can get an understanding of what it is that you're actually going to be looking at when I start to put the spreadsheet on YouTube or Rumble, wherever you're watching this from. So, accruing. We have I'm going to use if you remember from the first episode when I went through allocating, I had rent was $1,600 a month. That was the scenario I was rolling with. And the way I allocated that, one of the ways I showed that you can play around with the allocation of it was if you need to pay more in a certain week from a certain expense than you usually budget for it, you have to reallocate that higher expense from somewhere else. And so in the scenario that I presented in the first episode with, I took the $200 away from rent and I put it into spending. So I'm gonna roll with that in this episode. And just so you kind of get the gist and you understand why, I might allocate $400 here and then the balance next week's gonna be $600 instead of $800. That's why. Okay. So we've got rent and we've got food, petrol, spending, and savings. They're going to be our expense items that I'm going to be recording this on. And so if you remember from last week, you've got what you've allocated for this pay cycle. Just quickly too, I define a pay cycle as starting at the moment that your pay slip enters your account, your bank account, however it is that you get paid. The moment that finishes, the moment the money goes into your account, pay cycle begins. The moment before the next paycheck enters your account, pay cycle ends, okay? So that's basically how you define it. So if you get paid weekly, fortnightly, monthly, it's all the same thing, right? Pay cycles defined the same way. You're just looking at this, if you get paid weekly, is week 1, week 2. If you get paid fortnightly, it's fortnight, and monthly, so on. You get the gist, I can keep waffling on it, but I'm not going to. All right, so we've got, in this first pay cycle, this is how we've allocated our income, and that's a total income that we've allocated of $1,000. I hope the math's right. That'd be really embarrassing if not. Now, as we go through the pay cycle, you can record what you spend as you go, which is what I like to do, just keeps you on top of it. Otherwise, when you get to the next pay cycle, you can go back through all your spending for the previous pay cycle and just record it all in one hit. Like I said, I like to do it as I go. It's fun. You stay up to date with it. It's easy. So let's just say, hypothetically, okay? Now, in this week, rent was not due until week 4. So this is the week that rent is going to be due over here. So we're not going to have spent anything for rent. So spent nothing. Food, let's say the entire food budget got spent. Petrol, let's say the entire petrol budget got spent. Let's say we spent $150. Maybe we went out and bought some food. Maybe we went shopping or whatever. Savings, we didn't touch. So now remember that equation was 400, so what you've allocated minus what you've spent is going to equal your balance. So you've got 400, 200 minus 250 minus 50, 200 minus 150, it's actually really hard to write 5s on the side. It's crazy. You don't think about it until you start doing this. And the balance here is 150. They end up looking like S's, but you get the gist. You're smart, you're clever, I know you know. All right, we'll tally up the spent here. So each pay cycle is gonna have its own balance. And so what we've got is we have spent 400 with a remaining balance of 600, okay? So that's gonna be, each pay cycle is gonna have its own balance. And then what we're gonna do over successive pay cycles is we're going to add the balance from the previous pay cycle onto the balance of this pay cycle, and so on and so forth, right? So now over here, we're gonna move over to pay cycle 2, because we've finished this, we've moved into the next pay cycle. So this balance column here, that's what we have in this balance column on the left side of these tables, and then the accrued is just gonna be adding the balances, okay? So how we get the balance is this same thing, except I'm just not gonna have this first 2/3 of the table on each one because it'll take up way too much space. So we're gonna roll again with hypotheticals, okay? So rent, you're gonna have a balance of 200, because again, like I said, I'm rolling with the example from the first episode. And so you've allocated 200, you haven't spent anything from rent, so you're left over with the balance for that week of 200. Again, let's go with the balance of 0 and 0, because we'll say in that week you've spent all of this. Now, if you recall from the example from the first episode, I had to take 200 out of the allocation for rent to put the extra 200 into the allocation for spending, so that I could cover some kind of expense that popped up that I wasn't really prepared for. So the allocation for spending for this week, instead of being the 200, would have been 400. So then that way, then you would have had 400 here, and maybe you spent that whole 400. So now you've got a balance of 0. And then 150 for savings. Again, you didn't spend 150. You were able to keep it at that. So we have a balance here now of 350. And now this is where the accrued comes in, okay? So this is the balance for pay cycle 2 specifically, right? But we're up to pay cycle 2, right? We need to include the data from previous weeks, otherwise we're not gonna effectively be tracking our bank balance, and that's the key for a lot of this. So now we add these numbers together. So the accrued balance in our bank account, 50 in 300. And what we're gonna have is $950. And you'll see what this means is that $600 balance from the first pay cycle plus the 350 balance from the second pay cycle is going to give you an accrued balance of $950. And that's how this continues to work and how this continues to stack up. Now we go to the next one, okay? So we're back to, now that was $500 allocation. So because we had to chop 200 out of the rent allocation, right, we need to make sure that we put 200 in over these 2 pay cycles so that we have the $1,600 needed to pay the rent, okay? I hope this is making sense. So again, we haven't spent it, so we've just got our $500 allocation. Again, 0 and 0. Spending, we're back to, again, let's say we spent 100 this time. So for this particular pay cycle, we allocated 200, we spent 100, end up with a balance of 100. And we haven't spent anything from our savings. That's just been saving up. And again, now we just make those additions here. So now in pay cycle 3, we want to add the accrued balance from pay cycle 2 to 3. And now we get 1100, 0, 0, 100 plus 50, 150, and 450. So you see how this stuff really, these balances really start to accrue. And this number, so this number here, this accrued balance, this is going to be the same number as what your bank account balance is. So this accrued balance is also your bank balance. So as you start to actually build these up, you can see 11, so 450, 5600, 1700. Okay, so you'll start to see how this number, 1700, if you check your bank account and you can see $1,700 in the account, you can go to the spreadsheet or whatever it is that you're using to keep track of all this, and you can say, I have $1,700 in the bank account. What does that mean? Oh, okay, well, I've got rent. I have $1,100. 1,100 of that 1,700 is for rent. What do we got? Spending. I've got 150 left over for spending that I'm going to carry over into the next pay cycle. I'm going to add $200 to that from the allocation from my income, and I'll end up with actually $350 that I can spend. How exciting is that? Savings. And again, savings is just accruing week on week. Okay, now here's where it gets slightly interesting. So rent is due this week now. So what's going to happen is you'll allocate that $500, right, to your to rent, but because now rent's going to be paid, that $1,600 is going to be paid. What that's actually going to look like, because you've got this $1,100 balance that you're rolling over. That balance, you've paid $1,600, so you've allocated $500, but then you're subtracting $1,600. So you're going to go 500 minus 1,600. Your balance is going to be minus 1,100 here. Okay, that can be a little bit confusing at times, but just remember your allocation minus what you've spent equals your balance. So that's going to be a balance of negative 1,100. Okay, again, 0, 0. And maybe you saw you had 350 we saw we had 350 in the accrued for spending this week. So we've just gone absolutely nuts and we have spent everything. So we've gone to, so 200 is the allocation minus 350, because that was what we'd accrued. So we're going to go minus 150, and then we're going to go 150 here. As usual, because we haven't spent anything from our savings, we've just let it pile up. Okay, now our balance here, that's going to cancel each other out. Our balance is going to be negative 1,100 for that pay cycle. And so our overall accrued balance is going to be 1,100 plus minus 1,100 is going to equal 0. 0, 0, 150 minus 150, 0. 450 plus 150 is 600. So adding all these up, our balance now is $600. And so we look at our bank balance and we see $600. That now is literally just the number that we've got accruing in that account for savings. So that's how that actually looks when you add up and you accrue up over pay cycles. We go into the final one and we're back to having that 400 that we're accruing for rent. And then we go, as usual, 0, 0. This is just assuming we're spending, because I can get really technical, but for illustrative purposes, I really don't want to do that. 0, 0. Maybe, yeah, we spend only 100 this week because we went bonkers last week. So there was only 100 that was spent, and then 200 minus 100, we have a balance of 100 left over, and then the usual 150, which then go 400 plus 0, 400, 0, 0, 100 plus 0, 100, and 750. It's going to give us a balance for pay cycle numero 5 of 650. And a total balance of 400 plus 750 is 1150, is 1250 in total. Now God, that'd be so embarrassing if I mucked up this math, but you can see how it's basically this balance plus this accrued, right? And then this number here, same as this one, is going to equal the balance for that week plus the accrued from the previous week. And because the accrued from the previous week is the number that's accrued from all weeks before that. So you only need to add the balance from the pay cycle you're up to the accrued from the previous week. So that is accruing, right? That is how pay cycle over pay cycle over pay cycle, you continue to add the balances and you can continue to effectively track and account for what your actual bank balance is telling you. Okay, now this is a really simplified version, but there's only 5 items on the expense list. I think mine, I've got like 30, I've got heaps, but it's the exact same principle. So now we've discussed the principles behind allocation, the equations behind your bank balance from the perspective of your income minus your expenses, and then plus your bank balance from the perspective of adding up all of the balances from an individual pay cycles perspective. And now we've just gone through accruing that account balance across pay cycles. So we're already actually most of the way through explaining the real basics of an effective budgeting template. There'll be a few more episodes to come on explaining some of these basics, and I'm really excited to deliver those. But what we're ultimately working towards here is me sharing my spreadsheet with you and putting it out there for free, and some really kick-ass tutorial videos on it so that you can just get going and action these principles in your own personal financial situation. So stay tuned, keep listening, like the video, comment on it, let me know what you think. If you have any questions or you'd like some clarification on anything, if you'd like me to crack more jokes, sometimes it can be a bit tricky when I get in the zone and I'm like focusing on what it is I'm trying to deliver here. I can kind of forget maybe to crack a joke here or there, but I also don't want to force it, because if I force it, you're going to feel it and you're going to go, fuck this guy, I'm turning him off. And that would be absolutely fair enough. I would second that. If you don't like this, stop watching it. Fuck, okay, good. All right. So thanks very much for listening. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.